Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another KTJ webinar for parents. My name is Glenn Moodie. I'm the principal of KTJ, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you to join us this evening. With me, I have Wendy Jones, who is our Director of Sixth Form at KTJ. Good evening, Wendy.
Good evening.
So Wendy is going to deliver a presentation of about 20 minutes in length on UK university admissions. During this time, if you have any questions you'd like to ask, please post them via the chat function. And following Wendy's presentation, she will try to answer as many of these questions as she can. Right, okay, over to you, Wendy.
Thank you. Okay, so today we're going to talk about UK admissions to universities. We're going to look at a few things. We're going to look at the different types of universities in the UK, what you should be thinking about when choosing universities, what competitive universities are looking for and how you can prepare yourself or your child for that. And then a little bit about the admission cycle at KTJ and the support we offer, and there's some links to research sites at the end. Okay. All right, so there are a vast array of universities in the UK. As you can see, there are 4 in Northern Ireland, there's 15 in Wales, there's 19 in Scotland over here, and there's 324 in the UK here, which gives a total of over 35,000 courses in the UK. So there is really a great deal of choice when you're thinking about going to the UK. However, most people have probably only heard of the Russell Group universities, and in particular the universities around central London. So we're looking at Imperial and King's and Queen Mary and so on here. However, I'd just like to point out that there are a vast array of universities. The quality of UK universities is universally good, and wherever you decide to go, you will get a great academic experience. And I think what I'd like to point out is that it's really important to spread your net wide and to do some really thorough research before you look into your universities. And the reason being is that quite often a subject specialist might not be in a university that you have heard of before. So it's really important that you do a lot of research when you're thinking about the UK. Okay. So what things should you think about when choosing the UK? Well, you are encouraged to research university options thoroughly. And at KTJ, we start this process in the beginning of the second term of lower 6 or year 12. And students are asked to complete a spreadsheet containing a long list of universities. And the things that they should be thinking about really are, is this course suitable for me for a number of reasons? So what sort of things should you think about? Well, style is important. There are lots of different styles of university, from the very modern to the very traditional, to universities that offer very academic subjects, to other universities that may offer more vocational style and may offer greater access to things like work experience and careers advice. So that's something that needs to be looked at very carefully as well. In addition, location is very important, and I know from our students that London is the favourite, probably followed closely by Manchester at the moment. But there's things you need to consider. Obviously, London is expensive. Some students would prefer to go to a smaller university or maybe a smaller town, so the size of the town affiliated to the university is quite important. There are also things like some universities are campus-based, so they'll be located on the outside of a university, whereas others may be located within the centre of a city, and then they will be spread out. So that is something to think about and has a major influence on the way that students feel when they get there. Size is obviously important, and there are some universities that have more than 20,000 students on campus at one time, whereas others, are much smaller, and they will have a much more intimate experience while they're at university. So that is something to think of when you're thinking about your own son or daughter, or yourself, and you're thinking about the type of experience that you want. Culture and facilities is also really important, and again, that depends on the specialisms, but it also depends on the facilities that are available at that location. So you might be talking about sports facilities or different modules that are offered at different specialisms, but it is important to look at what else is on offer at a particular university. And then really importantly, I think, and this is an area where universities are advertising quite actively now, and that is what graduates do. So what are the statistics after graduates finish is going to be really, really important as well. What is the uptake in terms of jobs? Now, obviously, students will probably be coming back to Malaysia, and I know name is really important, and that's something that you need to consider as well. But you do need to think as to whether it is a good fit for the, for your son or daughter, both academically, but also importantly, socially as well. And that's going to be really, really important. So in addition to that, some of the other things that you need to think about are specific entry requirements, and those are always advertised on the subject pages. And it's important to look at GCSE results as well, because that does play a part, particularly in the profile that they're looking for in competitive universities. And then subject combinations and English language and other things that they might need, like a portfolio or evidence of particular types of activities, is going to be really important. Cohort size, as I've said, is going to be something that's important. And then I think more important these days is what is the university offering in terms of career support? So are they offering work experience opportunities? Do they have outside internship opportunities? So these are the things that are really important. Are they preparing, and helping your student to get ready for the world of work afterwards? So that is something that's really important. Support, obviously, for international students is going to be something that you want to look at. What are they offering in terms of induction and pre-support, and also how are you going to be assessed? So there are different ways of being assessed. Some will be traditional exams at the end of each year, but increasingly universities do offer different types of assessments. So there might be different percentages of coursework, assessments, presentations, and so on. So it is important to look at how you will be assessed, and does that suit your child or yourself? Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about ranking. I know this is something that's really important within the context of Malaysia, and is something that you probably started to look at already, and I know employers do use it as well. But I would offer a word of caution when you're looking at rankings. There is quite a lot of disparity, and I think what's more important is that you do look at perhaps subject rankings, but even then you do have to take these things with a pinch of salt. And I think the best thing to do really is to research the course very thoroughly, look at whether it is outstanding in its area, look at the professors or whoever, the academic staff that are there, look at the modules that are on offer, because that's going to really tell you the kind of experience you're going to get at that particular university. I put two here. So the blue one is from the Complete University Guide, and this one is particularly useful because you can look at things like entrance requirements, student satisfaction statistics, research quality, employability, and so on. So that gives you a really good overview of what students feel their experience was like, and what kind of academic experience they got there as well. And then the red one, we've got the times. And just to point out what I was talking about, I've put up here some information on accounting and finance, and you can see that their top three, as it were, are a little bit different. So you've got Leeds in one and you've got Glasgow in another. So I think it does show that it is something to look at, but it shouldn't be your major consideration. Take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt as well. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit now about Ucas. Ucas is the portal that we use for applications to the UK, and it is also a really, really good place to start exploring your options in the UK. So last year they launched a hub, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in a minute. But there's also a wealth of information. You can look at career profiles in there, so they give lots of information about different types of careers and your pathways through there. There's lots of student videos and blogs, there's how-to guides, there's job profiles, there's quizzes, there's a short careers advising thing that you can do to find out what you're suitable for as well. They do have information on apprenticeships, which is not quite as appropriate for you guys, but it's still all there for you to have a look at. So I do recommend that that is your first port of call. I'm going to have a look at some of the things that they do here. Okay, so as I said, you've got subject guides, you've got advice on how to choose a course, you've also got entrance requirements, so you can actually filter a course that you're interested in, and then you can filter it by the range of A-levels that you may be applying with, so you can look at kind of safe ranges and more advanced ranges as well, and then you can see what different types of courses are available there. They do have open days and events, but obviously they're difficult to get to from Malaysia, but they do offer virtual tours, and I'll speak to you about that in a little bit as well. So there's lots and lots of information on there that you can use, and there's a really good place to start getting a feel for the subject and the modules. For each university that you find, you will see that there is a link also that goes straight to the university subject page, so you can find out in a lot more detail what the modules are offered, particularly in year 2 and 3 when you're going to have your major dissertation to do, and it will tell you the specialisms and more about the entrance requirements as well. So it is really the best place to start looking. Okay, the Ucas Hub was something that was launched last year, and I highly recommend it. So you can log in and start looking now. It is related to particular year groups, so if you're looking kind of earlier in your career, then you may need to re-log in another time, but that's okay. So you can actually save courses, so you can make a favourite list. If you're in the UK, you could have a look at open days and so on. It's got a personal statement builder to help you guide you through your personal statement. It's got a A-level tariff or entrance requirements calculator, so you can see, you know, what your grades are and what universities you're likely to be able to get into as well. And I think what's really nice about this as well is that they connect you to students studying at different universities as well. So they have a new buddy system where you can find your course that you're interested in, and you can actually connect with students that are studying at that university, and you can have a live chat with those students or arrange a chat at another time. So it really does give you an opportunity to explore in some depth to find out the good, the bad, and perhaps the ugly of a particular course, and really, you know, get that information that you need before you start applying. And also, I mentioned the virtual tours before, so this is a really good tool for you guys when you're international. Some are better than others, so you do have to explore and see what they have. Some you click on there and it will give you a virtual tour, and you'll zoom into different buildings and it will tell you about that building. It will tell you about the facilities and the different departments in a lot of detail. Others, it will just take you to their website, and you kind of have to navigate from there. But it is, again, a really good resource for getting a feel for a university, because it's not just the academics, as I said before, it's about making sure that your child feels comfortable in the environment that they're studying. And some of these big universities are not always the best places for a child if they want something a bit small, for example. So do have a look at that. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what you can do to support your child to prepare for competitive universities in the UK. And I would say as well that all university applications are fairly competitive, but obviously I'm sure you can think of a few that are particularly competitive. So we're talking about universities like obviously Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, LSE, Warwick, Manchester. So most of the Russell Group universities will come into this. So preparing for university applications, you really do need to stand out, and I'm going to talk to you about the different ways in which you can stand out. One of my mantras in the sixth form is to say, how are you going to stand out in your application? Everybody that's applying for these top universities are coming with the same kind of profiles in terms of their GCSE or SPM results and their A-level results, and they're coming with a swathe of A stars and A grades and other extracurricular music qualifications and so on. So you really do need to think about how are you going to stand out. In addition, universities are very clear that they want students that are academically engaged in the subjects that they want to study at university. So it's really, really important, and this can start as young as Form 4 really, that a student starts to engage in the subjects that they are interested in, and then as they become more clear as to what pathway they want to study, they can obviously narrow down their research. But researching is really, really important, and engaging in the subject at a higher level than A levels, or at a broader range than A levels, is absolutely essential. So how can you do that? Well, at KTJ we have an academic enrichment shared drive, and on there are links to all sorts of online learning portals from top universities around the world. We've also got FutureLearn, which is another type of MOOC, and there are also lots of suggested reading for a wide variety of subjects that we update. In addition to the library that we have here, we have an annual subscription to JSTOR, which is an academic database, so students can search there and find lots of information on different subjects from there. We have academic journals such as The Economist or Law Review and things like that they can search in the library. And also we have our own sixth form academic enrichment library situated in the sixth form, where there are all sorts of books on a wide range of subjects, from philosophy to science to humanities to law to medicine, anything that you can think of, art even. So we do encourage students to visit this library in the sixth form, take books out, obviously return them, but just to get a feel at the start of what they might be interested in, but then really narrow their reading into something that they are particularly interested in when they're thinking about applying for those universities. So academic research and academic engagement is vital, and it should start at a very early age. So there's no reason why you can't start it in Form 4 or Year 10, and then, as I said, you can start building up expertise in perhaps an area, or reading in an area that you become more and more interested in as you proceed, really. Okay, so reading is really important, but we don't just, and universities don't just want students who have read a long list and can produce this bibliography of texts that they have read. It's really vitally important that a student is able to engage in what they've read and think critically about what they've read. So those kind of higher learning, higher order learning skills are very, very important. So thinking critically about what has been read, questioning what has been read, what they've read, finding alternative arguments and really engaging in those arguments, and thinking perhaps what is my opinion on this, and what do I want to look at in the future, and where is this research that I've read, where's it going to take me, what questions do I have that I'd like to ask at university. And those are the sort of things that then feed into applications and personal statements as to motivations for studying in a particular university much later on. So that academic research and that academic engagement and interest is vital. In addition to reading, you can also look at current affairs is going to be really important. Work experience may be really important. Just to give you an anecdote, I had a student that has successfully got into Cambridge this year for engineering, and I think his extended project qualification was key to that, because he actually, not only did he create a wind tunnel, but he created an aeroplane in a 3D printer that dealt with all the physics to do with this. And his first question at interview, if you like, his warm-up question was, tell me something that you're interested in about engineering. And of course, this student was able to wax lyrical about his EPQ project and his findings, and his excitement, and his project obviously came through. And to the point where the interviewer was like, could you send me a copy of your research afterwards? I'd be really interested in seeing it. And that really is the level at which, if you are serious about these type of applications, you need to be engaging in. So if you're thinking about things like engineering, then it's really important that you look at perhaps practical projects that you can get involved in. So at KTJ, you could get involved in the 4x4 challenge with Land Rover, where you build a little model Land Rover. There are other skills involved in that, but programming and engineering is part of that. Some students like to go on and do online learning courses as well, or they might just fiddle around in their garage or in their house and build things. So that engagement, that self-motivated, independent learning in an area is really, really important. And again, that comes into things like computer science. If you're not coding, if you're not exploring, then you're not really going to be competitive enough to get into these type of universities. So research, reading around the subject, showing your interest is absolutely key, and I can't stress that enough. In addition, you're going to have to do things like preparation for admissions test, and the earlier again that you start that, the better. These are things that in some ways you can prepare to a certain degree. You can get used to the type of questions that are asked. But again, the more research, the more reading you're doing, the better prepared you are going to be to face the type of questions, the type of critical thinking that they have in these tests that is really absolutely nothing to do with what you learn at A level. So these are really, really, really important. So there are just a few things here. I've just put a few ideas up here, things that you can do. On our KTJ academic enrichment site, there are links to all of these kind of things. So Cambridge has its own HE site, it's called Staircase 12. Oxford has a similar one. There are things on iTunes, there's Future Learners I've spoken about. Harvard, Penn, and also MIT, and all sorts of universities have their own portals and have their own lectures that you can go into. TED Talks is obviously very good. And there are also some summer schools, if that's a financial option to you, where you can go to America or the UK. The LICEF one is really good if you're interested in STEM subjects. That's held in Imperial every year, and some of our students do go to that and come back absolutely enthused and motivated about the industry leaders that they have had an opportunity to speak to or listen to during that project. So these are the sort of things that are really, really important. So just a little bit now about the support that KTJ offers at KTJ. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a timeline here. So we start, I guess, from word go, really, when they enter the sixth form, and we start with our academic enrichment. This is also open to our Form 4s and 5s, and I'm really pleased to see that we're getting an increasing number of students from those years coming to join us with our academic evening talks. So our academic evening talks run all year round, and they can be on a whole variety of subjects, and they're designed to open students' minds, to get them to think about subjects perhaps that they haven't got any knowledge about before, and maybe it will ping an interest for them to go on to do a project on it or to start doing some reading on it. But it makes them more worldly and more knowledgeable, which is really important. So that starts from the beginning and runs all the way through the sixth form. And we also have transition skills that help students in the first term to manage their time, manage their skills from being GCSE students and helping them to transition to eventually being completely independent degree level students. So that is term 1. In term 2, we start focusing on applications for the UK and other countries as well. So students will be encouraged to start researching. They will have an individual tutor who will manage this process and will be touching base with students on a regular weekly basis to see what universities they've got on their long list, to look at their academic progress and to make sure that they are staying on track with what they need to be doing. And then obviously they will start in the second term on their personal statement, which is their first time they will have ever written a letter of application, probably. So they do find that challenging, but they do have the sixth form team to support them with that and their very own tutor. So in term 3, their first draft for their personal statement will be finished, and the sixth form team will be starting to write their references. Okay, so when they come into upper 6, they will have lots and lots of one-to-one meetings throughout the whole time in their sixth form journey, but they get more and more as the time goes on. So they'll get lots of meetings on an individual basis with an expert from the sixth form team who will look very carefully at the universities that they want to apply to make sure they've got some insurance, backup universities, safe universities, and some perhaps more challenging universities as well. They will have a conversation with the student to see that their personal statement and their reference match and kind of coordinate to produce the best possible picture for that student. And then we also have specific ECAs that go on throughout the 2 years as well for Oxbridge, medics, engineering, and so on, law, to help with the specific application details of those type of university applications. By October, all Ucas submissions will have been done. And the reason that we do it so early in KTJ is because then students can concentrate fully on their A-levels, which is really important, which they need to get the grades in. And it does become very empowering because literally, usually within 2 or 3 days sometimes, students will have received their first offers, and they will be extremely excited, and that will really motivate them to start working extremely hard towards these goals. Usually by Christmas, I would say 90% of our students have at least 4 or maybe all 5 of their offers ready, which is great. Obviously, the exception to that will be LSE, Imperial, Medics, and obviously Oxbridge, who will have interviewed in December, and their decisions come out in January. Okay, and then Medics, they could be interviewed anywhere between January to March. So all of these things will be going on. LSE and Imperial take a very long time to make their decisions, and they will go right up to the deadline. So I would always advise students not to worry, particularly when they start hearing other people getting offers. It just does depend on whose pile they're in, and it doesn't mean anything if somebody's got an offer and they haven't. So term 2, again, we support students through their interview practice, both in term 1 and term 2, actually, for Oxbridge and other interviews. And then in term 3, we also support them. They have an individual meeting with myself to discuss all of their offers and to make sure that they are considering everything that they need to consider and that they're making the best possible choice for themselves. And then we have a concurrent life skills program going on to prepare them for university, departure briefings, visa talks, and so on. So they're very busy in KTJ during this time. Okay, here's the links to the resources that I've spoken about, and you will also find these resources in the resources section of the webinar. So please do help yourself and have a look. Okay, so that's about it from me. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Wendy. A very informative talk here. We've got lots of questions coming in, so I will get started straight away. The first is more a statement rather than a question, but perhaps you could respond to it. It's about the personal statement that the student has to write and the restrictive nature of the fact that they can only write one personal statement, even though they're making 5 different applications.
Yes. That comes into the research, really, because it's very important that the student is clear what they are researching for. So we wouldn't be advising that the student applies for 5 different courses, because they're likely to end up in the no pile for those universities, because they would be thinking they don't really know what they want to apply for. They're probably going to drop out, so it's not necessarily a good option for us to give them an offer. So part of our guidance comes into what is it that you really, really want to study. Do some research on it, make sure it is what you want to study. So obviously in England you do have to narrow your options more, but there are combined courses as well. So it depends on what they want to do. So for example, they might want to do just pure psychology, in which case it's easy. Your personal statement will be just based on your motivations and your reading around psychology. However, there are lots of psychology and subjects, lots of combined honours that you could do. So it could be that somebody wants to do psychology and media studies, for example, or psychology and philosophy. So the personal statement would need to cover both of those components to some degree. All right, so the admission students would need to know why they want to study a combination of philosophy and psychology, or whatever it happens to be. So that's going to be really important that those are addressed. And then what we do is we make sure that the university courses that a student is applying for are vaguely similar, and the university admissions tutor will pick up that, okay, so they're probably applying for maybe criminology and law in this university, but perhaps in another university they might be applying for social policy and law, but they are very similar, and they will get that as well.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. The next question is about the requirement for local history and Bahasa Melayu for students who want to study medicine overseas, but then come back and practice in Malaysia. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure, yes. There are websites that you can go to that will help with this. Obviously, the Government Ministry of Education website is the best one. The advice is that you need to have got it before you can start practicing back in Malaysia. So I think the advice I would give is to get it done while you were doing your degree. So I think whilst you're doing your degree, you also need to factor into the fact that you need to study for your Bahasa and your local history and spend some time and basically plan some time for that. You've obviously got long holidays at university as well, so that is something that you could be making sure that you do, so that you are ready when you come back to Malaysia to take those exams and to pass them.
Okay, thank you. I've got a question here about pre-university or foundation courses at universities for post-IGCSE students. I think most universities offer those sorts of courses now, don't they?
Yes, they do, and there is a variety of different courses in the UK that are called foundations. So some for international students that can come in after GCSEs, and they can range between 1 year to 2 years, depending on your qualifications and your age. And then there are other types of foundation courses in the UK that are either for students that have not done quite so well in their A-levels, but their entrance requirements are still quite high, or they've taken the wrong A-levels. So, for example, for some engineering foundation courses, if a student didn't realise they wanted to be an engineer when they started, and then midway through they do, there are some courses where they can do a science STEM-based foundation course because they've taken perhaps humanities at A-levels. So it's really, really important that you do, again, the research and you look at what type of foundation it is and who is it for. Now, as an international student, you've got a lot more options than perhaps a British student would have in terms of foundations. And as we said, there are these foundations that are designed for international students. So there will be a fairly large component of English language training and support in those types of foundation courses as well. I think one thing you have to be careful of is that these are businesses, and they do make a lot of money for universities. So I would always do a lot of research on those courses, and one of the questions I would be asking is, what is the retention rate, or what is the success rate from going from the foundation to the actual degree? Because some of them don't guarantee that you will get a place. Some of them say you need a certain percentage of pass rate, and then you also have to say, well, how many actually get this pass rate? And I think you also have to be careful about, there are some programs run by Into, which is a big company in the UK, and they do advertise that a whole list of universities, including places like LSE, King's, and so on, where you can do one of these courses and then apply to one of these universities. But they do take a very, very small percentage of students from these courses onto their degree program, because they are highly selective, obviously, and if they can choose people that have got good A-levels, that's their first port of call, really. I think where they are useful is if you have a student, for example, and this happens quite a lot, where they're desperate to do law, but perhaps their A-levels aren't quite good enough, then one of these courses can get them in the back door of a better university, as it were. So perhaps, and you have to be mindful of the fact that when I say the back door, they are still asking for, say, maybe 3 Bs as opposed to A star AA, for example, or 3 As. So the requirements are still high, but it does mean that you can get into a university perhaps that you prefer to go to with lower grades. And that sometimes is really useful for the students, particularly in STEM subjects, engineering, where they're not quite there with their maths, or they're not quite there with their English, and this will just give them a little bit of extra time to improve, and then they will get onto the degree and sail through.
Okay, thank you. So in your talk, you talked about the Ucas hub, and I've got a question here about whether that's available to students below the 6th form. It
is, but I think if you register for an application cycle, so I think you may have to start again. This is something that they're working on. It's fairly new, and it is a question that I've put to the Ucas team, actually, because they always want feedback. So it looks like you have to restart again, but they may be changing that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to read the next question out word for word because it's quite complicated. Okay. So some universities have an age entry of 18, but if you fall short of 18 by a few months, they may allow deferred entry. But would it be advisable to apply to those universities or is it preferable that we stick to universities that have no such limitation?
Okay, so all universities have a minimum age in the UK, and if you do fall below that, you can have a guardian, and that could be a relative or a friend that's already there, that's already of age. And sometimes universities will put you in touch with people that are prepared to be a guardian. So I think if you know that your son and daughter is going to be underage, then it's really important that you contact the university directly and find out what their procedure for that is, because it does vary slightly from university to university. Secondly, you also, I think this is really important, if it's a medic, then some universities do have a minimum age requirement and they will not budge on that. So if you are applying for medicine and there is a minimum age, there's no point in applying, because you won't get a place if you are under that.
Okay, thank you. Now, how important is work experience for a university application in the UK?
I think it comes back to that academic enrichment and preparation that we were talking about before. For medicine, it is vitally important. But that can come in many different ways. So it could be that you've gone to shadow in a hospital, or that you've worked in an orphanage or something. But actually, working in a local supermarket or in a hotel or something like that could be equally valuable, because you are showing or demonstrating transferable skills there. So I think it's really important for a number of reasons, but it might not necessarily help you with your application per se, and I'll explain that a bit more now. So if, for example, you wanted to go into law, there is no requirement that you need to have done work experience to apply for a law degree. However, what that work experience does is it gives you an insight into the profession. If you get a good internship or work experience placement, then you can really ask lots of questions. You can see what a lawyer does, and you can get a real good feel for what the job entails. And sometimes that can be equally powerful in that you come out going, I really don't want to do that, as opposed to coming out and being really excited. So it's as much about what do I not want to do as what I want to do as well. And then obviously, if you've done that work experience, then that will feed into your personal statement, and it really gives some powerful reasons and motivation as to why you want to pursue a particular course. So I think it is quite important.
Okay, thank you. So with the current COVID-19 threat, a number of universities have announced that at least temporarily they're moving lectures online, including some universities in the UK. So there's a question here about whether that's going to reduce the effectiveness and quality of the lectures once they move online. What's your opinion on that?
Sure. Well, I've been to lots of webinars over the last few months discussing just these things. And in fact, I was at a Ucas webinar conference over the last 2 days. So hot off the press, some information here. So the universities are saying that the quality will be exactly the same. And universities are starting to come out with plans now for September. So that might involve a later start date. So some universities are saying that they're going to start later in September or early October. Some universities are coming out, so Cambridge and Manchester have come out and contacted offer holders to say that their lectures will be held virtually, but their seminars and tutorials and every other aspect of university life will be held face-to-face, but obviously there will be social distancing practices in place. So the overwhelming message is business as usual for the UK, and that you will still get a good high-quality service. And I think, like many schools, there has been a learning process, and the way that things are being delivered has become quite innovative. So I think that's feeding into practices at university as well. In terms of actually getting there, I know the visa office is opened on the 1st of June, so you can start looking at your visas now. And if you're a student applying for engineering, you can now start applying for your ATAS certificate. So things are moving in the right direction now. So it is really a question of touching base with the specific universities that you were applying to or have applied to or are interested in, and all of them have a COVID page and will have the most up-to-date information there. So that's an important place. In terms of deferral or thinking about maybe delaying things a little bit, again, you have to look very carefully at the general guidance on that on the university, and that's the thing that you'd have to go to the universities directly to and discuss that with them. Some are happy to defer, some are not. And what they are saying is they're not seeing a great deal of deferrals, actually. They're seeing that the numbers are still very much in the positive of everyone coming to the UK still. But obviously, if there are more deferrals, then there may be more competition next year. So they're kind of talking about it in those terms as well.
Okay, thank you. You anticipated my next question there, so I will move on. So there's a possibility, of course, that a student gets none of their 5 offers through Ucas. What do they do in that situation?
So we have early clearing. So if a student has none of his offers, and that will come up quite, that would become apparent in the system that I've got, so I can track everybody's application. So at KTJ, we would then get that student in for a chat, and we would discuss what options they have available to them. So a student will go into early clearing, and they will be able to apply to a single course at a time. So there are courses. So if you do the filter search in Ucas actually, and you put in this academic year, you can see if a course has vacancies still or whether it is full. So that would be our first point of call, to do a filter, to look at what universities are on offer, what have places, and then it's a question of applying to that particular university individually. They will get back fairly quickly and offer a place or not. If they don't offer a place, then you'd go on to the next individual university application. If they do offer a place, you're given a certain amount of time to take it, and if you take it, that's great, and if you don't, you're back in the pool, as it were. So that is the general process.
Okay, thank you. I think we've got time for just one more question. I think this one must be from a student. It simply says, if I did my own research, how can I prove that I did research? I'm presuming you're reading around the subject or whatever. How do you prove that to the university you're applying to?
Well, I think it comes in, as I've said, I think it comes through with what you would be writing, for example, in your personal statement. If you have a genuine engagement for a subject that you have read, that will come through in what you're saying and what you're talking about and the way that you were thinking about that subject. And, these admissions tutors, they're really generally very experienced, and they can spot somebody that has just, shoehorned a couple of famous books in or whatever. It does really come from the depth, I guess, at your ability to discuss what you're interested in, whether that's on your personal statement or if it's a really competitive university, that will be at interview level as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, well, time is up. So Wendy, thank you very much for such an insightful presentation. A lot of valuable information there. And I know, of course, you're always happy for KTJ parents to get in touch with you directly via email if they have any other questions. And so please do feel free, parents, or students, to get in touch with Wendy directly. And I think it just remains for me to thank you, Wendy, very much for your presentation this evening, and to let parents know that this talk will be available on our YouTube channel shortly, and the presentation will also be made available to everyone should you want to have a look at it again, and obviously there's a number of links in that you may find useful. So to everyone, have a good evening, and thank you very much for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.